Let's be frank. For too long, it seems, the church has been a little bit too obsessed with who's in and who's out. The church has been a bit like a bouncer at a cosmic nightclub, checking IDs, squinting at dress codes, making sure that no undesirables slip past, We've spent, frankly, centuries drawing lines in the sand, building fences, crafting intricate theological obstacle courses, all in the name of God, of course. But what about Jesus? What does he say about who's in and who's out of God's kingdom? Well, before we try to answer that question, let's look again at that first reading, the one from Acts chapter 15. So just to recap, we've got the Jerusalem Council. They're a bunch of earnest, well-meaning folks, and they're scratching their heads and arguing and debating. Now, do these Gentile newbies need to be circumcised? Do they need to follow all the old rules? You see, these Gentiles, they're troublesome, they're problematic, they're not Jews. And annoyingly, God seems to have called Peter and then Paul and Barnabas to just wander all over the world, welcoming people into God's kingdom. Well, this won't do. And these people are arriving and they haven't been circumcised, and they eat food that we don't eat, and they don't obey all the rules. It's a serious question, though, for them. For you see, for the Jewish members of the faith, these rules meant everything. Purity, identity, who belongs to God's chosen people. And then Peter stands up. Old Peter by then, impulsive Peter, the one who denied Jesus 3 times and then ended up weeping bitterly over it. He speaks with an authority that is born of grace, not rules. The grace that he received from Jesus, even though he denied him 3 times. Peter says this: God made no distinction between the Jews and the Gentiles. He purified their hearts by faith, just as he did ours. No hoops, no hurdles, just faith, just love. And then James, wise James, quotes from the prophet Amos. He says that all other peoples may seek the Lord. All peoples. Not just the ones who look like us or talk like us or believe exactly like us. Not just the ones who fit our carefully constructed theological boxes. They landed on a few practical guidelines. Don't eat sacrificed meat or don't eat blood, because for Jews, the life of a being was contained in the blood. So to eat the blood was seen as not paying due respect to the life force of that blood. Don't eat strangled animals, presumably out of a sense of kindness towards animals. And certainly keep yourselves from sexual immorality. It's practical stuff. Practical stuff for living together. Not obscure rituals for proving your worthiness. It was about making space, not building walls. It was about loving acceptance. It was about being the kingdom, not just debating its entrance requirements. So with the Jerusalem Council in the back of our mind, let's turn to Jesus and to those words from John 15. Our Jesus, the one who walked among us, who ate with outcasts, who touched the untouchables. What was his big message? Was it a detailed blueprint of salvation mechanics? Was it a forensic examination of sin and atonement and the doctrines thereof? No. He just says, plain as day, Abide in my love. Not understand the intricacies of my atonement, not debate the timing of my return. No, just abide in my love. And how do we do that? If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. What are his commandments? Well, you know the answer to this because we rehearse them every Thursday at the beginning of our service, don't we? They are not the 613 intricate laws that the Pharisees loved. No. Jesus boiled them all down to two. Love God, love your neighbor as yourself. And then he gave us a sort of a new one, an expansion of that second one. He says, love one another as I have loved you. Love one another as I have loved you. This is not rocket science. This is heart science. You see, I think that for too long we've made Christianity about believing the right things about Jesus rather than living the way Jesus lived. We've majored in propositions and frankly we've sometimes minored in compassion. We've built magnificent cathedrals to complex doctrines while the hungry are still starving, the lonely are still yearning, and the marginalized are still suffering. Now, yes, Christian tradition points rightly to the cross, to Jesus' ultimate act of self-giving love. Love one another as I have loved you. The cross is a profound mystery, a profound symbol of radical grace. But Jesus himself, in his own lifetime, in his own ministry, emphasizes how we should live. He shows us the way. He is the way of radical, extravagant, inclusive love. So here's the rub. Do we keep arguing about who's in and who's out, just like those earnest folks at the Jerusalem Council almost did? And let's face it, folks, churches and Christians are very good at arguing about who's in and who's out. Ask a Roman Catholic whether they think that any Protestant is in. Ask many Protestants whether they think Roman Catholics are in or out, because they do or don't believe some particular nuance of belief. Now, we're too good at it. Are we going to carry on arguing about that? Or are we going to follow Jesus' lead and focus not on keeping people out, but expanding the circle of who is in? Are we going to get bogged down in theological gymnastics? Or do we just get on with the business of loving our God with our heart, soul, mind, and strength, as we said at the beginning of the service? Loving our neighbor, all our neighbors, even Americans, as we have two of them with us today. Yeah? Do we get on with loving our neighbor? Particularly the ones that the rest of society might label as other or stranger, just as Jesus loved us. Incidentally, I was just checking messages in the vestry before I came out, and a friend of mine sent me a clip from a newspaper. It was the Daily Express, reporting the tragic death of two migrants yesterday in the Channel. And the friend who sent it to me was overwhelmed by sadness at the comments that he could read underneath that newspaper article. The cruelty with which people almost celebrated the death of two people who are desperately fleeing to these shores for a better life. Oh, serves them right. They shouldn't have got on a boat. Serves them right. They shouldn't have left home, you know. That kind of cruelty has no place in Christian thought. Loving others, loving the stranger, this is where joy is, my friends. This is where abundant life is found. Not in proving our righteousness, but in pouring out our love. Not in being right, but in being light. So my invitation to you today, at the end of this service, is to go forth not as bouncers, but as welcomers. Not gatekeepers, but bridge builders. Let's live out Jesus' commandment of love. Let's abide in his love as he abides in the Father's love. And in doing so, let the joy of the Lord be our strength and a beacon to a world desperate for true, unconditional love. Can I get an amen? Amen.